Brewtiful. I'm Anthony, and today we're going to be doing an episode of This Week in Beer. This is a segment on my channel where we go through and we talk about the hardest hitting, hottest news stories coming out of the world of beer, brewing, home brewing, all that jazz. Except there is a slight problem. It has been an unbearably slow news cycle the past 3 weeks or so, however long it's been since I did that last episode. And honestly, this week isn't much better. However, there has been one or two little stories that have been kind of interesting, and I would have normally included as just a little fun story in other videos had there been more pressing news. So I figured I might as well just go ahead and compress all those together in one episode, spanning the past couple weeks. So this is more this past month in beer or so. Not as catchy, but get the point. So I kind of noticed this week that there was a little bit of a theme for some of these stories, and that is, it's hard to tell if this is a real news story or an Onion article, but I can't wait to tell you some of this one, especially this first story coming out of Other Half in New York. Apparently, they were having a grand release party for, I think, their anniversary, and they were going to have a bunch of different hype stouts and some IPAs, and people were lined up out the door all the way wrapped around the block when tragedy struck. Kind of. When conflict arose, that's the better way. A man that has been described by the media as a craft beer hater approached the beer fanatics who were waiting in line and brandished a firearm. Now, luckily, this story doesn't go too crazy. There were no injuries, there were no gunshots, which, kind of in this day of age is kind of a blessing. But when you get into the story that led up to that moment, it's just so bizarre. The incident began around 9:00 p.m. as people were setting up their tents and their camps to stay overnight for the beer release. A couple, a man and a woman, walked around the corner, and they were very drunk and belligerent, making fun of all the people waiting in line, calling them nerds and losers and all this other stuff. And the people online actually thought it was kind of funny, so there were some playful jive and back and forth between them. At least that's what the line goers thought. The angry drunk man in that couple was very dead-ass serious. He began to approach them, got a little physical, some shoving, took their stuff and threw it, chairs and stuff going everywhere, and eventually the scene kind of settled down and the man was pushed inside of an Airbnb across the street by, I'm presuming, the female companion he was with. Sometime later, he came back downstairs and he was slamming some White Claw's hard seltzer. And he started up the whole dialogue again, yelling at him, calling them names, whatever. But he also started chunking White Claw's seltzer cans at the line goers. And the line goers, some of them thought it was kind of funny, but one of them almost whiffed this lady who was in line, and she did not think it was as funny, so she instead started, calling him out, calling him an asshole, all this other stuff, and he said, how about I put a gun in your mouth? That kind of brings the whole tone way down. I've seen a lot of weird, goofy stuff happen in beer lines. I've even seen fights, but I've never seen anything escalate to legitimate life-threatening threats. Once again, he went back inside, and everyone kind of thought, maybe it's died down, it got a little weird and heated there for a second, but whatever, we'll move on. No. He walked back outside with the gun in his hand, and, that's at least brandishing at least, and maybe, terroristic posturing, especially in this day and age. It's kind of weird, I'm not a lawyer, but it's definitely not cool, let's say that. Fortunately, people in the beer line were able to talk the situation down, get the dude back inside, and the cop showed up, went inside, and arrested him. So, it's just kind of a bonkers, bizarre story, but thankfully it did not end in tragedy. Thankfully no one was injured, and just what a weird story. Next, we got a couple real short, little tiny stories that we're gonna just blow through. First off, super punk, hardcore punk brewers, Brewdog, has taken to Facebook and asked their Equity for Punk members, which are people who, when they went public, they were able to buy shares and invest into the company, except it's not really shares. I'm not sure how the whole thing works, but people were able to invest into Brewdog and make money off of it, and they're punks. equity punks. Anyways, Brewdog took to Facebook and told their Equity for Punk members that the thing that they should be doing is going into grocery stores, going into bottle shops and gas stations, wherever Brewdog products are sold, and start straightening up the products and making sure that their whole little counter and it just all looks nice and neat and tidy. There's nothing more punk than going into a $1 billion establishment and straightening up the products of like another multi-million-dollar establishment just so that you can make money on your investments. Punk. And they were like, don't tell the employees what you're doing. Don't even ask for permission. Just do it. And if they come up to you, say, I've invested in this company and I want to make sure it looks good. Which, to a certain degree, I kind of understand. I just think it's so comical that they're like, punks, go out and straighten up, because nothing says punk more than making money on your investments. I really don't like Brewdog. Their beer's fine, just their whole culture, I hate it. Our next story comes from India, where a small little village awoke one morning to turn on their faucets, start their showers, and were blasted by a toxic combination of wine, liquor, and beer coming out of all of their plumbing. Apparently what happened was there was a bulk of illegally produced alcohol that was confiscated by the local authorities and buried. However, for whatever reason, it seeped out of its packaging and infected or infiltrated, contaminated the local well where all the people get their water source from. And of course, as the plumbing drew out of it, it just started spraying them and blasting them, filling up their glasses with basically illegally manufactured alcohol. The town promised to fix this problem, but you could argue it's a little bit of a blessing. However, that could take up to a solid month before they're actually able to completely repair the infrastructure and solve the baseline issue. So if you ever wanted to go to India and be able to drink tap water and get drunk off of it instead of diarrhea out of it, now's the time to go. And speaking of beer and water and plumbing and all that crap, we have another story very similar, just the reverse, coming out of Minnesota, where a local water treatment scientist has discovered that actual byproducts of beer production, the yeast and even spent grains, can be used to actually treat municipal water systems in a healthy, chemical-free, and most importantly, money-saving manner. He was able to take some yeast and he was able to propagate it with the water and the grain, and he was actually able to dump that into local water systems, and they were able to break down and degrade a lot of the organic material that had been building up without the use of harsh chemical treatment. Additionally, this process saved that city over $1 million annually because they won't need to upgrade to a higher, better filtration system for the water system. So, I mean, it's a win-win for everybody. Brewery gets to help out the public, that's always good PR. The tax dollars aren't being wasted if the job's still getting done in a healthy, proper manner. I mean, it's a win-win for everybody. So I would like to see in the future more beer experimentation and how we can better our living situations, how we can better the environment, how we can save some of that moolah. Gotta save the Skrilla with the beer. I just think it's really cool that as we progress, we are still finding new and better ways to make beer useful in everyday life. Now, if none of the other news stories I talked about really gave you that onion vibe, I feel like this one does. At least it made me feel like I was taking crazy pills. Our last story comes out of Japanese brewing giant Kirin. Now, Kirin, if you don't know, they have their own line of products, but they are also a conglomerate that owns breweries in Australia, all across Asia, Singapore, where all that stuff, and even in America, where they are soon to be the owner of New Belgium. One of their little investments is becoming a bit of a problem. They actually own a majority stake of the Myanmar Brewing Limited. Now, if you don't know anything about Myanmar, They are a little country that is currently going through what could be described and should be described as brutal ethnic cleansing. But it turns out the rest of the ownership for the Myanmar Brewery Limited is actually by the Myanmar government, but more specifically the military, who are actively conducting the genocide of the Rohingya people. So currently, Kirin is trying to decide whether or not they should pull out of this investment or if they should continue on with this current business arrangement. Which I'm just going to go ahead and give Kirin a little bit of advice. All right, just a little. I'm no business expert. I'm no CEO, but I got a little common sense. All right, this is the biggest softball that has ever been thrown to any company at any time, anywhere, ever. It's not a hard decision to decide, hey, are we making money off of people who are committing genocide? Are we actively funding the death of an entire population? Maybe we shouldn't be a part of that. And it is actually funding these military activities against a completely unarmed, completely defenseless people. Some investigative journalists discovered that thousands, tens of thousands of dollars were through both profits and for just like investment injections were funneled straight through the brewery from Kirin into the hands of the military system, who are conducting the greatest military engagement they've had in decades, which is also to kill innocent civilians. So you literally can't say that Kirin's involvement in this brewery isn't actively participating in the death of thousands and the forced migration of hundreds of thousands. So for Kirin to be debating this, one already says a whole lot about them. But I am hoping against hope that they are smart enough to realize, hey, this ain't a good look. So me personally, I will not be drinking any more Kirin products or any of their subsidiaries, to include New Belgium and any of their other American entities, until we are able to say, hey, look, participating in the purchasing of these products aren't helping to kill innocent civilians, women, children, forced rape. I mean, it's bad. It's really bad if you look into it. I don't usually try to get all political or everything like that, but I would encourage y'all to also not support these or the products or the companies or anything that is actively participating in mass death. I really don't feel like that's too hard for us as a beer community to get behind. It seems like a solid cause. All right, well, I got a little heavy there at the end, but I do want to really thank y'all very much for sticking with me watching this whole video. And for real, the last video I posted on the Legends of Beer of Stephen Foster, oh my God, the response was absolutely amazing. It was my best performing video maybe of all time, especially in a 24-hour period. So thank you very much. I was blown away. Huge support, a lot of new subscribers. Thank you all very much. I'm almost speechless at this point. So yeah, thank you very much. Stay tuned, got a new video coming out. It's gonna be a doozy. So like, comment, subscribe. Remember, there's a story in every bottle, and that life is brewtiful. Cheers.